Okay, we're back, and we're going to change the presentations up just a little bit. We're going to have our SHTA president, Brendan Farrell, come in do his presentation, his communication to us first.
Thank you, President Kerr, and I appreciate the adjustment in the schedule, Mr. Rilio and President Kerr. So I have a report tonight that I want to include also a preemptive comment about 13D, I think it is, also. So I'll start there. That's regarding the negotiation session between the St. Helena Teachers Association, 13C, thank you, Melissa. The collective bargaining agreement between the St. Helena Teachers Association and the St. Helena Unified School District. So a couple of comments about that. Number one, the members that compose the SHTA team, myself, Mark Lulsdorf, and Angie Bond, have been doing this for a couple of years, and I feel like they do a great job, and I just want to publicly thank them for their support of all of our members. It's a really difficult job because we have a task of trying to create language that supports all of our members at the same time. And then from the SHTA, or from the SHUSD side, Mr. Heller and Ms. Roca, who is a new member to their negotiation team. I thought they were very professional. I thought that they worked hard for the community in the school district and you as board members. And it's always been a really good process since I've started here negotiating with the district. We have certain aspects that we fight harder for, just like in any negotiation. But Mr. Heller also fights very hard for things that you believe are important for the district's longevity as well. So I want to appreciate the process first, and I feel like the agreement in 13C, when you get to it, is representative of a really collaborative effort by the teachers and the school district. So I appreciate that very much, and our members voted overwhelmingly to support that agreement. So thank you very much. So, all right. And then finally, I do have a piece of news that I'm going to share. I am going to be resigning at the end of the June month as SHTA president. I want to express in my report a thank you to the school district and my members and my leadership team. And I believe that this job came with lots of challenges, and I knew that going in, and then we had fires and smoke and COVID and all sorts of things that made our jobs all really difficult. I will say that our membership, always put a lot of faith in our process, and I want to thank them publicly for doing that. They held, very strong through issues they felt very strongly about they very passionately about during COVID, and I felt like we really did a good job of moving the dial towards returning to school, and I think that was really important. But overall, I think that I felt pretty rewarding opportunities, or I felt pretty rewarded by doing this job for the last 7 years. Professionally, there were a lot of instances where I'm really happy that we came out the way we did. I will say I do want to, I guess, caution in the direction of enrollment for our members one final time. Our enrollment, it will have a direct impact on our membership, and I do want to support the fact that we need to really take a look at our declining enrollment as we move forward in the next 5 to 10 years. So that'll be my parting words. I really do appreciate, I worked really well with Mr. Heller, and I appreciate all of his efforts, and Andy Stubbs, who will go off and think about all the times that we had great discussions about about the budget and the reserve and all those things. So, but they were all in good faith to whatever side that we were supporting. And I want to thank everybody for your support of me as well. So.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Go Saints. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now let's move back up, and we're at the student rep presentation, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I would just like to start by saying thank you to the band and Ms. Fulmer. It is very apparent that they work very, very hard, and she is a really great presence to have on campus on both the RLS side and the high school side, and that really brings lasting bonds to our school, and it was a wonderful performance that cannot be topped tonight. So this month at the high school we had AP testing and CASP testing, which not a lot of us enjoy, but we get through. And it went relatively smoothly. We did it in the pack for the first time since I've been here, so that was interesting, but I think it was a good change. We had prom last weekend on May 13th. It was a success. We had 186 tickets sold, and we had 186 people in attendance, which is really unheard of. No, we were very, very excited in leadership. There was a prom drive 2 weeks before, so we would community members donated shoes and clothes and jewelry, and then we laid it all out, and people during access or during lunch could come and take things that they wanted. So we're just trying to make things more equitable, as well as keeping the ticket prices down so that everybody does have an opportunity to go. Today was walk and bike to school day, so we really want to stress Earth Day in the month of May and April. But we're trying to help kids find different and alternative ways to come to school. So today, anybody who rode or walked to school got a banana or a bike helmet, maybe, I think. There was a table outside the quad with Mr. Cinto and some leadership students that were giving some fun snacks away. So that was very exciting. Spring sports are also coming to a close, and most sports have had their senior night. And track and baseball and softball are all going into playoffs and states. So as Mr. Farrell left, good luck to softball as well tomorrow night. It was an end of school rally planned for tomorrow, but unfortunately, due to the construction in the gym, we decided to dismiss that rally and have the senior slideshow at some point during the school week next week for all the seniors who are not attending awards night, and it will also be played then so that they can have their recognition as well. So here's our prom setup. So that was all before, and the chandelier was actually made in leadership by one of our students. It took her 2 weeks. Yeah, it was very cool. And then on the table you have all the nominees for prom king and queen and couple.
Who won?
Gemma Jimenez and Sebastian Gallegos. Yeah, I didn't want to butcher his last name, but they did win, and there was lots of screaming for them and chanting. It was very fun. It was a success. So at the RLS, everything's really just end of year projects. Kids are ready for summer. I can sense the angst to get out. I mean, I feel that at every school site. It's just that time of year. This is our last full month of school, so it's really just the end stretch. In art, and lots of classes, but especially classes like art, there is a cumulative skill-based end-of-year project. So you're building off of everything you've learned throughout that trimester, that semester, that year, really in every class, and you're just accumulating all your knowledge and putting it into a project or a conversation, or a lot of the times in English we'll have Socratic seminars, and it's really just allows you to see your progress throughout the year. So I think that's really good for kids to see where they've started and their growth over time. And not only do we see that on CAS tests and on MAP tests, but we see that through band and through art and through other mediums. So it was really a treat for me to go into art and see their projects. The 8th graders had their movie night in late April, which I heard had good attendance and was very fun for them since the 8th graders got to go to Yosemite, which was also a hit. It was their first overnight trip since 5th grade camp. So I'm sure they were excited to get away, and I heard that it was a blast, which is what we always like to hear. So here's some of the art. They did depth positive and negative spaces, and then realism for their projects. At the elementary school, there's always things going on. But when I attended the elementary school, the 5th graders had just gone to RLS for their preview day, and they loved it. They were so excited to go to middle school, and they said they were afraid, but also they felt very welcomed, which obviously is the #1 priority at this point. They went to 7 classes for 20 minutes, which is the first big change going into middle school, is the multiple classes a day. So they got to meet teachers, go to PE, go to snacks, see how the school energy is, as well as go to the 6th grade area, which is like their safe space, as well as the quad, which is like the big roaming area for everyone. And then, of course, 5th grade camp, we can't not talk about that. It was really great when I came back to school and I heard of the high schoolers raving about the fun experiences they had with the 5th graders, and they had parties and they went on hikes, and I love to see the interconnected schools, and it really makes me feel like we're in a loving, welcoming district when I hear great things on both sides. They loved it, they explored, they learned. That's the point. We love field trips. That's what I feel all the time, is that field trips are invaluable experiences and they really grow the community feeling. So thank you for making that possible. The 4th graders have been taking on new responsibility. They will be the 5th graders next year, and that's been stressed really this last part of the school year. They started teaching 3rd graders short math exercises, so I thought that was really interesting. And I think it's a good opportunity for them to learn how to critically think and be independent, as well as be a leader in their school. So, at the primary school, I have the honor of attending a special visit from Miss Ashwanden, where they brought sheeps and rabbits for Miss Landis's TK class, and they sat down and the class sang songs about animals, and it was probably the cutest thing I've ever seen. It was really, really delightful, and the primary school is just a ray of sunshine every time I go there. It's a wonderful place. I love seeing, again, just the high schoolers and little kids connecting is a really wonderful thing for both sides. You can see that they're learning as well as having fun, and people are giggling and getting to know each other. And even the kids who were like a little afraid of the animals, the high schoolers were going over and helping. It was a really wonderful experience to be a part of. 2nd grade, just like 4th grade, is going to be next up. Oh, 1st grade. 1st grade is next up on the totem pole, so they're really learning their responsibility and their independence in and outside of the classroom. So it's stressed that when you're in the classroom, you're independent, but also when you go home and trying to do things on your own. And I think that for that age group, that's the most important thing to be focusing on and emphasizing. And I just think that it's a great way to end the school year as well. So here's Miss Ashwanden's class, Ag Systems and TK. And you can see they're on a little blanket and the animals. It was really cute. Oh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, as always. Thank you. Is there any questions or comments? No? Good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So our next presentation this evening is a presentation on bond refinancing opportunity by CFW Advisory Services, LLC. And Ms. Stubbs, please. Thank you.
I would like to introduce Kush Guillermo to come to the podium, and he's from CFW Advisory Services, and he will present. Kush Guillermo, and he will present information on bond refinancing, and he is from CFW Advisory Services.
Great.
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kush Kara with CFW. Very pleased to be here this evening. Thank you for inviting me to present this information to you.
Thank you.
I've worked with school districts for about 30 years, and I've had the pleasure of working with St. Helena for about 20 years now. I wanted to give you some background information first and then present an opportunity for your consideration. I know there's an action item later on in the agenda for you to consider. But as by way of background, voters in the district approved 2 bond elections. The first was in 2010, where the voters approved $30 million of bonds in Measure B. The bond passed at a 60% passage rate. You need just 55%. And all of those bonds were sold. the district once again went out to voters in 2012 to seek an additional authorization to complete additional projects for $30 million. That bond as well passed at about a 60% passage rate. All of those bonds have been sold as well. So at this point, the district has issued all of the bonds to fund projects, and you've completed projects with that. In addition to issuing bonds, one of my jobs is to monitor opportunities to refinance bonds. Just like homeowners refinance their mortgage to reduce payments and generate savings, from time to time there's an opportunity to refinance school district bonds to be able to generate savings. It does not generate any new money to the school district. It's just all the savings are passed on to taxpayers who pay back the bonds via property taxes. So a lower interest cost means a lower payment to taxpayers over time. The most recent saving, completed in 2015, generated about a little over $530,000 to the taxpayers net of all costs. And that, once again, is being passed on to taxpayers, and taxpayers will be paying $500,000 less in your community as a result of the refunding, or the refinancing, which if you hadn't done, you would be continuing to pay over market rates at that time. So we're here back today to present an opportunity currently to refinance some bonds that the district had sold in 2013. When bonds are sold, for the most part, they have a call protection, which is that they're not subject to refinancing for 10 years. That's pretty much a standard clause. There are some exceptions where you can do a refinancing sooner. But the 2013 bonds are now coming up where we can currently pay off the existing bondholders by issuing new bonds at a lower interest rate, and thereby the old bonds are no longer a responsibility for the district, the bonds that carried a higher interest rate, and they're replaced with bonds with a lower interest rate. So the old bonds carry a rate of somewhere between 3.5% and 4%. If we were to refinance at today's rates, we could drop that interest rate down to about 2.4%. Please understand that that interest rate will vary day by day, but at this point, it's about 2.4%. That translates to a savings of about $1.4 million. So if the board were to approve the transaction, and if we could complete it today, which we couldn't, there's a process to complete these transactions, you would lock in about $1.4 million in savings that once again would be passed on to your community, and they would be, at the end of the day, the St. Helena community would be paying about $1.4 million less in interest costs over time. There's a little chart on the right that indicates, I'm sorry, I think it's the page before this one, please. Okay? There's a little chart on the right that indicates historical interest rates going back a while. Okay? And you'll see that while we're not at historic interest rates, we're still pretty close to near low historical interest rates. Interest rates started rising late last year, and then they came down earlier this year. And what's bad news for the economy is usually good news for the bond market. And the part of the recent drop in interest rates has been attributable to the banks failing, where folks want to take their money out and want to invest it in the safest investment, which is in most cases bonds. So later on in this meeting, there are a couple of documents for your consideration. The action item is a resolution. The resolution establishes the terms of the refinancing bond if we were to proceed. It establishes what type of bonds could be sold, the maximum term, and other structuring parameters. Along with the resolution, there's another document called the preliminary official statement. It's the actual prospectus that, if the board approves this tonight, would be prepared by bond counsel and sent out to investors. It contains information about your assessed value, property values in your district, your enrollment, your budgets, and allows investors to make a decision as to whether they wish to purchase your bonds or not. Your bonds are likely to be in extremely high demand because of your rating. You're rated AAA, the highest possible rating category that any entity could have. And therefore, especially in times of economic uncertainty, we anticipate there would be a lot of investors lining up to buy your bonds. Okay? And selling bonds is demand and supply. The more folks we have trying to buy our bonds, the lower we can drive down our interest rate. So the key steps, the last page, the key steps to refinancing the board is I'm here to present some information and answer any questions. A little later in your agenda, there is the resolution that would then authorize staff to begin to work on this process. Okay? It's about a 45 to 60-day process to complete a bond transaction like this one. Okay? If the board were to authorize us to proceed, the next step we would do is your staff would go and interview into San Francisco with the rating agencies. Okay? Our goal is going to be to maintain our AAA rating. We can't go any higher. Okay? There may be some downward pressure on the rating, given the uncertainty of the state of California, which I know that we're a basic aid district, and we're not that we're quite not dependent on the state of California's funding. But there may be some there may be some headwinds, okay, that we may be facing as we go ahead. Okay. There are going to be some concerns from the rating agencies as far as declining enrollment. But once again, it's our job to educate the analysts who don't see basic aid districts every day that for a basic aid district, declining enrollment is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay. Purely from a financial perspective, for an LCFF district, of course, that presents quite a few challenges. Okay. So once we've received, if the board adopts the documents, and once we've received our rating, which we anticipate to be in the highest category, somewhere in the AAA or the AA categories where we anticipate our rating will continue to be, okay? The next step is to then conduct the bond sale. Okay? And bond sales are a little bit unique. They're all conducted via phone, and it's a verbal transaction whereby the underwriter will go into the market, attempt to secure investors, and then make a proposal to you and your staff, to your staff and to us, okay, as to a proposed interest rate. Okay. It is our job to negotiate with the underwriter for the best possible interest rate and to advise the district on the interest rate. We will also invite the county treasurer to participate in that process because they deal with investments all the time. Okay. And if that interest rate is acceptable to the district and the savings are sufficient, could be higher, could be lower than what we're talking about at this time. Okay? Verbally, on a phone call, the district locks in the interest rate. Eventually, everything is documented in written documents. Okay? But this is one of the last few businesses that actually works on the spoken word, and it's part of why I enjoy being in this business. Okay? Assuming the pricing does occur, that's the last step. Then there's the closing, just like in a home sale. If there's an escrow period that you go through, where the legal counsel, your bond counsel, will go ahead and take care of all the documentation that they need to make sure it's filed with the relevant authorities. Okay. And at that point, we will then inform the county that the old bonds that you were paying the 3.5% to 4% interest rate on are no longer, that they've been paid off. Okay. And the county will now be levying a tax based on a new lower repayment schedule. And once again, those savings get passed on to the taxpayers. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this process, if any.
I actually have a question, so thank you very much. When I am walking down the street and a homeowner says, I heard that there's 1.4, again, I know it's just, we don't know, interest rate savings against the bonds that we agreed to in the last, I guess this is a 2013 bond. What does that mean for my home? So how would I explain that in terms of a savings for a homeowner?
Great question, Kay. And we can calculate and we can provide to your CBO a response. We'll take the average assessed valuation of a home in your district and see what it applies to. For the average home, it's not going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not, okay? But there's some larger businesses over here that will clearly benefit, okay? And at the end of the day, it is $1.4 million that comes back. Okay? And what we will do as well is typically after this type of a refinancing, we would publish a press release to put on your website and make available to any interested parties, okay? Indicating that. So I will absolutely, I don't have that answer at the top of my head.
I wouldn't expect, but it's
Yes.
like percent of what you're, is it percentage based of?
So it's the tax
Of what
rate
they
is based on assessed valuation.
Yes.
Okay. And the assessed valuation is different than the market value. It's per Prop 13 in California.
Yeah.
The assessed valuation for people who've owned their homes for a while, it could be lower. Okay?
Yeah.
So it'll be proportionate to the assessed valuation. Okay. If there is a home, I'm making up this example,
Fine.
of course, that accounts for 1% of the total assessed valuation. 1% of 1.4 million is $14,000. So that home
Okay.
I don't think there's a home
That's
that
fine.
has 1% of the
Right.
assessed valuation, but that it would be proportional to the value of the home versus the the total assessed valuation. So the savings would be allocated proportionate to the value of the property.
Perfect, thank you.
So my question is we secure a credit rating and we go out to the bond sale and we don't get the interest rate that what we thought we were going to get. Are we committed regardless, or is that at that point, are we able to say, no, we don't want to do this at this time?
Great question, ma'am. Absolutely, you retain, until the midnight hour, you retain the ability to say and you will be delegating that to staff, okay?
Right.
But you can set a threshold, okay, that it makes sense. Look, if all we're going to save is $200,000, it probably doesn't make sense to do this thing, okay? If we're going to save $1 million or more, maybe it makes sense to do it, okay? But that's your determination, and staff maintains the ultimate authority verbally at the time we lock in interest rates, at which point the savings levels will be determined and known for sure. If you adopt the resolution tonight, by no means does it obligate you to complete the transaction.
Got it.
You can pull out at any time you wish until the pricing is complete. Once the interest rates are locked in,
Right.
at that point you are locked into the
Right.
transaction.
That sounds, okay, perfect, great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My question is then, like, what does this mean to us? Is there a fee for your services? Is it a percentage? How does that what does it cost us to go through this?
Absolutely. And so there's a couple of players involved. There's my firm involved as your financial advisor. There's the bond counsel. And then there's the underwriter, the broker who buys the bonds from you and resells that. And there's the rating agency. Those are the major players in a process like this. Okay? We estimate that the fees for all of those to be about $180,000 for all of the various players. Okay? And those fees, all the fees except the rating fee, are contingent. So if the transaction never gets done, my firm doesn't get paid, the bond counsel doesn't get paid. Okay? And those are paid from savings. So in my hypothetical example over here, just using round numbers, if everyone worked for free, the total savings would be $1.6 million. Okay? But the fees are paid out of the savings, and the net benefit goes back to the community. Am I answering your question, ma'am? Thank you.
And remind me again, when did we do our last refinance?
In 2015, ma'am, and I believe you were on the board
I
then.
was.
Yes,
That's why I just.
I do believe I had made a presentation
Thank you.
at that
It's nice
time.
to see
and-
you again.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other questions, trustees?
I was just gonna, so the 1.4 million, assuming that's the amount, we'd take off the 180K, or was that already?
That's net of that.
That was
so,
net.
Yeah. So
Okay, thank you. That's all.
It would be 1.6 less. I'm just using a round number. 200 is equal to 1.4. So, but please understand, ladies and gentlemen, that the number could change quite dramatically, especially right now while we're all in our industry biting our nails. Okay? I think the debt limit issue is going to get resolved by Congress. I can't imagine we go into default. Okay? But any news article right now leading anyone to believe that it may not get resolved causes this huge blip in the market. So we hope to be past that stage well before we go in and sell bonds. So, but we'll continue to keep your staff informed. If it doesn't look like it makes sense, not only do you have the ability to say, I don't want to do the transaction, but you also have the ability to say, I don't like the savings that I'm seeing today. I'm going to roll the dice. I think it might be better next week. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Come back and try it next week one more time. You do maintain that ability as well.
Okay, great. Okay, any other questions? No, everyone's good? Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Okay, so we're at communications, board member reports. Trustee Simon, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have had the pleasure to visit Principal Cinto and the high school several times today, this year, and I've learned so much. And I have a clicker. And so what I wanted to learn more about on my most recent visit was about all of the clubs on campus. And so I had a wonderful talk with Principal Cinto about them, and I'd like to just share what I learned about the clubs. We have almost 20 clubs, and they renew their charters each year. They are student-led, they have a core mission, and a teacher advisor is at the meetings. The parent group will club some of the funds, and at times the clubs will raise money so they can coordinate excursions or events. And I have some pictures of the chartered fishing excursion by the fishing club. Let me see. Yep. Great day at sea. Really exciting. Yeah. I know. What is that? Is that a... It's a leopard shark? That's what... Yeah. Sturgeon? Thank you. Okay. And then before we get to this wonderful championship team, I just wanted to share that some of the clubs that were mentioned were the Peer Mentoring Club, and that is advised by Mr. Fetters and Mr. Cinto, and they have a QR code for students who need to request a tutor, or they have another QR code on campus for students who might want to become a tutor. And the peer tutoring and mentoring is a complement to the free English and math tutoring that happens every Tuesday and Wednesday in the library by Mr. Patterson and Mr. Davis. A new club that's going to be starting, and the advisor will be Mr. Blazingame, is the Mycology Club. And I had to ask Mr. Cinto, what is mycology? And it's the study, it's the cultivate interest in the study of fungi and promote their importance in the natural world. So it's a mushroom club. So that will be on campus. And I also learned about the history of mushroom hunting in Sonoma and Napa, and it is a very big deal. Historically, so makes sense for our high school to have a mycology club on campus. We also have a Latino student union. We have the environmental activism club, which Carolyn spoke on. One of the drive this year was the dresses and jewelry and shoes for the prom. That was one of the things that they did this year, and. Let me see what else if I wanted to say. I think I'm going to move on. I also wanted to acknowledge and celebrate the St. Helena FFA Floral Design Team. They are the 2023 California FFA State Championship Team. And Linnea Cup was the overall high individual of the state contest this year. I also wanted to congratulate Arleth Bautista, Alan Gonzalez Bernal, and Sophia Cup. And just an amazing thing. There were about 60 different teams in California with ag programs, and 43 of them competed at state. And because we are the state championship team, we will head to Indianapolis in October for the national contest to represent California. So, yeah. So I think that's it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for all that good information.
Really
Thank you
good
very
stuff.
much. Thank you. Is there any questions, trustees? Thoughts, comments? Good? Okay. Yes.
I was going to ask, who runs the fishing club now? Because
Oh, I can tell
I
you.
can see that needs some press in the fishing column in the Star. Okay,
Mr. B.
okay. We'll get that in the paper.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so our next on deck here is the superintendent's report.
Will you pass me the clicker?
Of course.
Perfect.
Go.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
And so I'm going to skip ahead. Just a typical report for you all. You know, we like to review our mission, our vision, our priorities, talk about some highlights. Of course, I'm never going to top what Carolyn does and visits all the schools. Puts me to shame. I'm going to step up my game. Just watch. And then we've been providing the board an enrollment update the last couple months, so we'll bring that back. And then, of course, we're entering probably the busiest time of the year with events, as you all are aware, because we keep asking you to come to things. So, as a reminder, our mission and our vision, just to center the work that we all do and why we are here. These are the current district and superintendent priorities. The 5 on the left are in conjunction with our LCAP. And then, of course, the priorities I provided the community and the board in January. that's the same, just in Spanish. So, highlights from the previous month. Not everything made it onto this list. I was here writing down notes. I had a very eventful, was it Fajita Fest or Rib Feed? One of those that ended in a vehicular accident for me, but I was healthy and well. Yes. So I haven't seen my red car out there. But it was a fantastic event, both of those events, just the support our community shows for our programs here at the high school and in our district. I mean, it was really amazing to see the giving that happens, and especially the rib feed where our students were presenting their projects and auctioning those off. There was just amazing, the work that they did. It's just really fantastic. Looking at the list that I have here, though, we had a visit by Dr. Luis Cruz, who works with Solution Tree. He has been working with our principals from the primary, elementary, and the middle school in their professional learning communities all year as part of the CAPS network. He is one of the main instructors, presenters, and he came out to us here where we met with the site administrators and the ed services staff and really engaging on what next year will look like around professional learning communities as we expand into the high school formally, as well as continue to support the other 3 schools. I want to give a shout out to the primary school. As of today, each of you trustees have had an opportunity to go and visit and sit in on a PLC and seeing the kindergarten team, the first grade team, and the second grade team, and seeing that whole process and how they look at data, how they discuss the different lessons coming up, how lessons were, if they were successful, and where students are. So I hope you got a lot out of those visits. I know I did. It was really fantastic to see just how professional our teachers are in the work and thoughtful they are in how they approach instruction for our students. And it is a gem to visit the primary school at any time. Tonight, we are going to have the LCAP public hearing. That document is only 101 pages long, I believe. Give or take 1 or 2. And I'm sure you read everything word for word, but you know that it is year 3 of the LCAP. The LCAP is a process, strategic planning process that we use to articulate our goals and what we're going to be working towards. And so since this is year 3, you don't see significant shifts in the LCAP, but we do make some adjustments from year to year. Next year, we will enter a full development of the next cycle of the LCAP. As Brendan Farrell, our SHT president, mentioned earlier, we did reach a tentative agreement, and tonight we're hoping the board will finally approve that agreement with our teachers union. I do want to also acknowledge and thank Chris Heller, Andy Stubbs, Rebecca Rocha, who served as the district team, as well as the SHTA leadership and their role. It was a smooth process, and they were able to come to agreement fairly quickly. We are still in the middle of our hiring season. We are getting close to wrapping up. We have made some tremendous hires. You'll see on the personnel register this evening a few more for you to approve, and we're making great progress there. And then, as mentioned earlier, I was actually at RLS when the 5th graders came to visit. That was really fantastic. I saw your daughter running through the tunnel of hands, and she was so excited. It was just a fantastic way to see our schools welcoming the next group. And then, of course, we've had these outdoor trips. We had the 5th grade education trip, which was really exciting to hear that our high school students chaperone the trip. What I heard from the 5th graders, almost every single class said I don't know if it's called the barnyard boogie or the barn boogie, was the highlight of the trip. Singing and dancing. And then, of course, we had our 8th grade Yosemite trip, got that back on track, even though I know I've heard from high schoolers who said they never had a chance and they want a chance for Yosemite. Sorry, Caroline. And it's just our highlights in Spanish. Here is our enrollment update. This is as of, maybe you can't see, as of we'll call it last week. This data was put together. I know, for example, in the TK, the second column, the projected enrollment, we are actually now up to, I want to say, I heard this morning that we're up to 16 TK students. So we are increasing there, which is not surprising because we've expanded the age requirement, right? Every year we're adding 2 more months in that process. The other grades, the only ones at this point that we know of where there are students still on the wait list are the TK classroom, 4th grade, 5th grade, and 7th grade. Everywhere else we have enrolled and or obviously made the offers to enroll for those who were in the applicant pool. I do want to just bring up, not that I need any action today, but food for thought for you all. We are getting inquiries for high school enrollment that, obviously the window for DOC has closed, the application window. But if there is an opportunity and we wanted to reopen the application window for grades 9 through 12, we do have interest in families wanting to come to our high school who are reaching out to Erica. So something to consider as we look at our numbers there, especially our 9th grade. We're sitting at about 105 students. And I have discussed with the high school team, are they open to that? And they're willing to take on students. But just some food for thought. Okay. A long list of upcoming events, and that's just in 1 month. And I'm sure I'm missing some. I'm not going to read all of them, but we have a lot of celebrations because it is that time of year. We have performances. We have the Civil War Wax Museum at the middle school. And I remember that because I visited this time last year when I was hired and I saw all the costumes being prepped for this event. That's a big deal, this wax museum. So you can see there's just a fantastic number of events and ceremonies and celebrations. The 2nd grade luau and arch is their version of celebrating our 2nd graders moving on from that school. It's still up in the air, Trustee Moore, if it's a luau or not. We weren't sure if that was what it's going to be called this morning. But it is a celebration. So we encourage you all to attend as many as you can. And that is all.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there any questions, Ms. Superintendent? No?
I have a couple questions. Can we go back to the slide with the DOC numbers, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. So the first question, in kindergarten, we currently have 32 students enrolled.
Correct.
Is that about average for this time of year last year? Do we have?
I think it's low. In fact, I was speaking with Nikki and Rosie in the office this morning at the primary school, and we were actually talking about this. I think with the DOC, we're in like the 41 students enrolled. Obviously, that's being combined. I think that's what I heard this morning, about 40, 41. Okay. And we talked about how do we get a sense of urgency for our families to come register.
Right, because historically we have a lot of families that wait. Yeah.
Right, and so then they'll get a rush right before school starts of 10 families, 12 families, 13 families, and so I said, well, one of our parents at that school is Jesse Torte. Said, can we get maybe an article about it's time to register your kindergartner?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't wait.
Right.
And just encourage our community to take care of it now. It'll help us know our numbers better.
Okay. And my other question is, with the interest at the high school, do we know which grade levels that's at?
I want to say that the majority are 9th graders.
Okay.
And it's a handful. It's not a lot. I mean, it's a handful of kids.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Good. Okay. So our next item is Superintendent Subcommittee reports. Mr. Aurelio, please.
Okay. We'll get that up. And so over the past month, we did have our May 2nd LCAP Planning Committee meeting. Trustee Simon and Trustee Mora, I believe, were in attendance, right? I'm going to turn it over to one of you if you want to give us sort of a wrap up of what was done. And of course, as always, we've included the notes, and that actually QR code will take you to the full packet of information from that evening.
Yep. In interest of time, we have the LCAP later in the agenda, so I'm actually going to suggest that we don't actually go into detail, but it was just going over the third item that we talked about at community tables, so which led to adjustments in the LCAP that we'll see later tonight.
Perfect. Also, we have another agenda item later this evening, which is a board policy 1114 is a separate item, but we did have a board policy committee on Monday. Trustee Simon and Trustee Kerr, you were there. Is there anything you want to add to that, or do you want to wait for that item itself?
Yeah, I'll wait for the item.
Wait for the item?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we only reviewed one item or one policy that during that session, and it is on the agenda.
Perfect. Great.
I needed to reschedule the student equity and belonging. We do have a date for that. That is June 1st, and that'll be the last one of those before the year is up. And that is the report.
Perfect, great. And so it's for the student equity and belonging, 3:30 meeting as usual?
Yeah, the
okay,
typical
typical
time.
time. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you very much. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're now, Mr. Farrell has already given the report, SHTA, the California School Employees Association report. There's none for this month. And then, as always, our principals have shared the things that are going on in their schools, which is always very interesting. And I'm always appreciative of those. We're now at consent agenda, and these are routine items that are that can be voted on at one time. And if anyone wants to pull anything from there, if they need more clarification or questions about any of the items, do so at this time. Is there anyone to pull anything? Okay. Is there a motion to? Excuse me. Let me get this. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry, roll call vote. Hold on, bear with me. Hold on. Nope, I got it. Oh, excuse me. Is there any public comment on this item? No public comment? Okay, perfect. Let me get to my little thing here. Bear with me. Shh. Jeez, look at all this stuff here. This is consent. There we go. Have any questions? Okay, Ms. Hanson will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Trustee Mora,
Aye.
Trustee Simon,
Aye.
Vice President Kerr.
Aye. That's approved. Motion is approved. Okay, the next one is the, I'm sorry, you can tell that haven't done this for a while. Okay, so we're on to board-related items. Review and updated enrollment projection study provided by King Consulting. And with this one here, Ms. Stubbs, please.
Thank you. And given the discussion around DOC and inter-district transfer policies and looking forward, we decided to update our enrollment projection study that was done around this time last year. And so we had King Consulting update that for us. And this study incorporates information about live births within district boundaries, in addition to our current enrollment information and any residential or commercial construction projects that are planned in the area that could impact enrollment. And then overall, this study projects a decrease in enrollment through 2030. And we did have King Consulting provide us with a couple of different projections within the study. And so if we can take a look at the table on page 2. And so this table here, and it's repeated later in the study, shows enrollment projections if no new district of choice or inter-district transfer students are added after 2023-24. However, it also incorporates allowing students that are currently enrolled in DOC to remain. So So then we see a decline in that enrollment in enrollment in that particular scenario. And then in the middle paragraph within this, if you look just above, he states that if no new DOC transfers are accepted in all future years up to the new enrollment caps adopted in January, enrollment will instead be higher with new DOC transfers maintaining enrollment at around 1,200 total students. So the idea there is, at a high level, is that if no new DOC or intra-district transfer students are admitted, depending on what policy the board adopts moving forward, then we would be in a state of declining enrollment. If we do have such a policy, then we would remain pretty steady, according to this projection, at about 1,200 students. And then on page 3, and I'm just going to point out a couple of additional highlights there, he discusses in more detail how the expansion of transitional kindergarten and planned residential development impacts our projections. And he goes on to discuss his methodology in more detail starting on page 8. And then finally on page 17, he has the two tables, repeating the table that you saw in table 1, and then also showing the enrollment with and without the DOC students on page 17. And then this study also incorporates the development, the Hunt Street project that we've heard quite a bit about, and of course it reflects the students that come to us in high school from Howell Mountain and Pope Valley as well. So King Consulting has been working with us for some time, and they're very much aware of our different policies and procedures, including, well, what we've talked about with the students coming from Pope and Howell Mountain, and they're familiar with our different planned residential and commercial development that may impact enrollment. So I feel very confident about the numbers that they've produced and the analysis that they've done. And if the board has any questions about the study, I can take it back to them and get some answers for you.
Is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? No, thank you. Do the trustees have any questions about the agenda item? Questions or comments?
Yeah, this is the second time as a board member I've been able to do a deep dive into the survey and understand the information and think about the information. And I am looking at the conclusion in the last paragraph about the district should work closely with the city of St. Helena to confirm anticipated residential development trends. And I know that is a hot topic in our community right now. And so I guess my question is, how can the district work with the city for housing? Do we need to do more? How can we do more to share this information with the public, so people who are not in favor of increasing residential housing projects might come to a different conclusion if they understand that the district, that our enrollment is decreasing. Just thinking out loud, but should the district work more closely with the city council in regards to this? My other question is, we've talked about inter-district transfer. So this decrease, if DOC were to go away, can we increase class size through inter-district transfer as needed to help with these numbers?
Right, and I believe there's two charts at the end. One is if essentially we close the doors to outside enrollment.
It's on page 17?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the one above that, next
Okay.
one, the one before that one,
Okay.
that one there. So that is saying that as of next school year, 23-24, we no longer accept students from outside of the district, regardless of which process, DOC or IDA. So essentially, starting in years 24-25, what you're seeing is just resident enrollment. keeping those that already are with us from DOC, because that process says once you're
Sure.
in, you're in.
Of course.
So those kids would eventually age out. But what you're starting to see is the lowered numbers at the primary school, like the kinder classes will get smaller and smaller, those grade levels.
Right. So if we switch to inter-district transfer,
Then we have more control over those class sizes or
Right.
those.
so
Those
where
grade
we
levels.
where we see community members and myself looking at those kinder numbers and thinking, oh, and for example, 26, 27, 45 students, if we change from DOC to inter-district transfer, when we see a low number like that, we can open
A grade level.
a grade level, specific grade level to increase numbers.
Right. So in
Okay.
an IDA process, I mean, you can do some of that with DOC, which we've done in the past as well.
Uh-huh.
But we set those caps. But if we see a grade level that's going to be hurting like that, or we feel that the numbers are too low, we could say promote that we are accepting applications for a specific grade level as long as we have that process in place.
So essentially, would inter-district transfer give us more control over which grade levels we would want to increase more so than DOC?
I mean, we have control with the cap process to do that. The challenge is the application window, right? So with DOC, we have a pretty narrow application window. I think with IDA, you can expand that a little further. The trade-off is that you're not getting the 25% of the ADA that you would get with DOC, right? We do get some funding for non-basic aid district DOC applicants.
Right, but for our district, it's pretty, I mean, it's...
So it's really for us, mostly students who come from Napa.
Yeah,
Anyone from Calistoga or any of those other Up Valley districts, we don't see the DOC dollars attached.
we
to
don't,
them.
right, and DOC...
Is that right, Andy?
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not from the basic aid. And we currently, we're receiving about $150,000 in
Right.
revenue for.
right. But the majority of our students come from Calistoga and from Napa. Those are the two biggies.
Those are our two largest
So
ones.
Calistoga currently is never receiving money for
Correct.
them because it's a basic aid district. And in the future, we do not know if the state will end the DOC
There is
process.
a sunset date for DOC. Do we recall?
They expanded it
7/28?
until 20
2028, yes.
2/20. Okay,
So we have some time. We don't have to make that decision today, but
right.
seeing these trends that, and you heard Mr. Farrell as well as his parting words,
Right.
I know that the membership is concerned about enrollment long term and decisions we'll have to make if we continue to shrink.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right. Thank
Yep.
you.
Any other thoughts, questions on the enrollment study? No, no. And I just want to echo what Trustee Simon said about, possibly some kind of a venue so that we're able to share this information with City Council so they know kind of where we're at. Because I don't really think that they do know that, where, that they hear in the community that we are declining, but I don't think that they know this, the significance of it and how housing could change that for us.
Correct.
It could be a game changer for us.
Right, because I know they've approved the housing project, but seems like there's a lot of energy around it
Right,
not going or going forward.
Sorry, it sounds like its location is the problem, not necessarily that we want to add housing, but where.
Right.
But where, exactly. So that's just my thought on that.
Right, and obviously these forecasts, there's an unknown of when that will be.
That's
So,
exactly right.
right.
That's exactly right. Yeah, perfect. Okay, we're all good? Yeah, excuse me, Ms. Stubbs.
And I can certainly reach out to the city next week and share this information with them, make sure that they have it, because we haven't really done that in the past, so I think that would be a good idea to help better inform the conversation.
Perfect. Trustees, you feel good with that?
Yes.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we are now on the request to accept gifts and donations earmarked. Let's see, so is there, how about, who are we talking with? Miss Sandy Stubbs, please. No?
Let's see, I don't think
Excuse
I've
me, no,
ever-
that's
I
notes.
think we ask a trustee to read
Yeah,
the list of
yeah,
donations.
exactly. So actually, it looks like there's just one. And Trustee Simon, do you want to read that one, please?
The board is asked to accept with gratitude the following donations. To St. Helena High School received a donation of $300,000 from an anonymous donor for the St. Helena High School Athletic Hall of Fame project.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on this? Thank you. Any questions on this donation? No? Is there a motion to approve the adoption of the gifts, donation, or earmarked funds as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf.
Aye.
Trustee Mora.
Aye.
Trustee Simon.
Aye.
Vice President Kerr.
Aye. Thank you.
Trustee Wagner.
Aye.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we're at the adoption of Resolution 2245, Pride Month. This is, Mr. Aurelio, please.
Okay. Let me get to my item. Sorry about that. So, the St. Helena Unified School District Governing Board, we're asking you all to vote to proclaim June 2023 as LGBTQ plus month to inspire equity, create alliances, celebrate diversity, and establish safe environments in our schools and communities throughout the county. And so up on the screen, you see a resolution. Do we have a volunteer who would like to read the
Ms.
resolution?
Wagner, would you like to do that? Yeah,
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you.
Resolution 2245. Whereas the vision and mission of St. Helena Unified School District promote a safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environment where all students can fully develop as resilient, caring, and responsible individuals and citizens. And whereas the St. Helena Unified School District celebrates diversity in students, staff, and the school community. And whereas the district is firmly committed to providing a safe, nurturing, and tolerant environment in our schools. And whereas the district is firmly committed to the school safety for all students, staff, and family members, including the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer/questioning, LGBTQ+ community, or those who may be perceived as such. And whereas Board Policy 5145.3 prohibits discrimination in its programs and activities based on gender or sexual orientation among other characteristics, and whereas June is a symbolic month in which LGBTQ community, their families, friends, and allies come together in various celebrations of freedom and pride, therefore be it resolved, the St. Helena Unified School District proclaims the month of June 2023 to be LGBTQ Pride Month and will honor and highlight the accomplishments and contributions of the LGBTQ community, students, staffs, and their families. Pride Month is an avenue to ensure that bullying, harassment, and discrimination based on real or perceived orientation, gender, identity, and gender expression are deemed unacceptable in our community. Be it further resolved, by recognizing Pride Month, the district continues to support all other policies, practices, and curricula that honor and respect the LGBTQ students, staff, families, and the greater community.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Okay, and we have any public comment here? No public comment here. Do the trustees have any questions? No. Perfect. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of Resolution 2245, Pride Month of June 23rd, as presented?
Motion to approve adoption of Resolution 2245, Pride Month, June 2023.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf.
Aye.
Trustee Mora.
Aye.
Trustee Simon.
Aye.
Vice President Kerr.
Aye.
And Student Representative Wagner.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you. Our next item is the review of the CSBA governance self-assessment tool, criteria, and confirm the timeline. And it looks like that's me. So we, as you know, trustees, that we do an evaluation of our board every year, and this is usually the time of the year that we do this. In the past, we put our own evaluation together based on kind of our goals and CSBA type of criteria. And then we decided, then we looked at one of the CSBA conferences, we saw that they actually have this, already have this self-evaluation tool for us. So we're using that now. And Trustee Simon, would you say it's pretty, how do you feel about the tool?
No, I appreciate the tool.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
yeah.
it's pretty. It's a good tool to use.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's part of the process is where we have a certain amount of time where we have to complete it. It's online, and then it does come to public session as far as discussion of it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm open to any questions at this point if you have questions about the tool.
And just to add, we do have the proposed window. We would open it starting tomorrow. It'd be available, and we would have it open until June 2nd, so full week to complete the self-evaluation, and then it will be coming back in the June meeting.
Okay, that sounds perfect. And then will Erica send that to us then?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Does the timeline sound okay to everyone? Okay.
And then at the next board meeting is when we'll discuss openly.
Correct.
Okay.
That's
The
thank you.
results, the results of the
Results, yes. Okay.
self-evaluation.
Perfect. Perfect. Was there any public comment on this agenda item? No, I didn't think so. Great, thank you. Is there any other questions then? Great. I'm sorry I wasn't very articulate on this one here. Okay, so our next one is board review, potential approval of the district goals for 2023, 2024. And I'm going to call on Mr. Aurelio, please.
Good evening, everyone. So this evening, we're bringing an update to the district goals and priorities. I am not going to ask you to take action on it this evening. We are going to send it back out just one more pass to the LCAP committee for a last look over, and then we will bring it back to you for a vote in June. Just a couple highlights for you to see. You'll notice that the 5 overarching goals do remain the same. That is part of the LCAP process. There are 4 goals in the LCAP, but we include a 5th goal on the priorities. That's the fiscally responsible goal, where we want to make sure we're always minding our budgets and making sure we're doing everything right. And that is the 5th one. Just a couple highlights there. In the first goal, in the increased achievement for all, the first bulleted item and the 4th bulleted item are just adding some emphasis in some shifts that we're seeing in the LCAP actions. If you recall, we've asked the board to approve a math TOSA or teacher on special assignment for our secondary, and that's reflected in the additional supports going towards mathematics. And then we've just added some language in the 3rd goal, the expand parent and community engagement, really trying to emphasize we did a great job this year of including our student voices in our subcommittees, but we want to go another step further, which is making sure that the student voices we're getting in the room is also representative of all students. And those are the only major shifts and changes on the goals and priorities. Like I mentioned earlier, we're entering year 3 of an LCAP, so you don't make drastic changes typically. And I'll take any questions.
Is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on this? No, thank you. Is there questions, comments, trustees?
I have a question about the 4th one, support physical and social emotional well-being for all. And I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but on the this year's we had 5 bullet points, and we've moved down to 3. Could you explain the shift from 5 to 3?
Just streamlining the item there. Trying to remember exactly what was on the 5th. The 5, they're not in my head right now.
It was creating an emotionally safe environment for our students was the one that's no longer there. Something along those lines. I think it was the 4th bullet point.
Right.
And it's leaving me now what the 5th one was, but.
I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah.
Like I said, mostly just to streamline it.
Okay.
Our focus, especially at the secondary level, we did a lot of work this year on developing the wellness space and the wellness center. And that will continue. I mean, that's tremendous, the amount of work that went into that this year.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you.
Are there any questions on this one? No? Perfect, and I'm in agreement. It's, I definitely would like to see the LCUP subcommittee have another pass on it. And then also, I think it's a good idea for us to have a full board here too when we approve it. When we
Okay.
approve it next month. So it'll be on the June agenda, is that correct? Okay.
Yes, we'll add
Awesome.
it to the June.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Perfect. Okay, this is now information and approval of BP 1114, district-sponsored social media. And I'm going to call on Mr. Aurelio on this one as well.
All right, good evening. And so we are bringing you tonight Board Policy 1114, which is a pre-existing policy. This is a policy that the board, I want to say in 2015, reviewed initially. This is a policy that CSBA has developed to support districts having coverage for any social media accounts they might manage. So we do manage a handful of social media accounts. Currently, we have 5 Twitter accounts, one for the district and one for each of the school sites. In varied use, not all of them get a lot of use. I believe the high school and the district are the ones who might post on a somewhat regular basis. And then we have the district-sponsored YouTube channel, and that's where meetings like these end up as well. So we were working with our insurance provider, and a question had come up earlier in the year regarding a YouTube video that was actually on a hosted teacher account, not a district-sponsored account. And questions came up on how do we ask for that to get removed, and it really took us down a path of ensuring that we have the broad coverage we need for any district-sponsored accounts. So tonight we are asking the board to review this policy, to adopt this policy that really begins step 1 in a process for us. Like I said, currently our district accounts are some Twitter accounts and YouTube, but the work that would trigger for us is establishing a substantial social media plan that would allow us to articulate exactly what kind of accounts we want, if we wanted Instagram or Facebook. As of right now, any Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts that you see that seem affiliated with our district are technically not ours. So that's something to note. I know many of us subscribe to, for example, the FFA Instagram, or the St. Helena High School Drama Department has an Instagram, but those aren't technically under our umbrella.
Okay.
And then we also have our director of IT here. If there's any more questions, he can answer those too.
Okay, so is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? No one? Right, thank you. Trustees, do you have any questions about this? Questions, comments?
I just wanted to share for the other board members, one of the points of discussion that stood out for me was talking about Parent Square and streamlining our 5 Twitter accounts that we have. So possibly in the future closing those Twitter accounts and just having everything in Parent Square. Parent Square does have an app, and it does it looks like a social media.
It mimics social media.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It mimics social media, and being part of the parent groups, there's always ongoing discussion about how can we condense how we share information. So Parent Square might be the answer to that, since it's newer for us, but also condensing the Twitter accounts that we have.
Right, and Parent Square wouldn't fall under this board policy. Parent
Okay.
Square is a communication tool. It's under our so it's essentially going to replace Blackboard for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we also want to see how it works as a tool for us, because it might replace, like you mentioned, like the Twitter accounts for our community.
Right. And I recall that Principal Cinto was also interested in that tool working that way for the high school.
Yeah, there's a Student Square component for
Yes.
student communication as well.
Yes.
Derek, did you have any comments that you wanted to state on this?
I'm happy to answer questions as they come up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
I think it seems like a challenge would be when we're talking about like Instagram accounts, FFA or drama. I mean, I can't imagine them ever posting something that wasn't appropriate, but how do we make the public understand that? I mean, I would look at it and think, oh, that's part of the district because it's St. Helena Ag or St. Helena, just like the issue we had last week with the student assassin that ran rampant in town. And, you know, I don't know how that challenge can be met. How does the school identify what is an official posting and what is a sidebar?
So one suggestion I made, and I think we're doing, is our accounts that are official, identifying them as official, in sort of the bio of the account. Obviously, we only have those 5-6 accounts. And on our district webpage, in the category around communication, listing which ones are the official accounts. So the default is if it's not on our list, it's not official. It doesn't change community clicking on it and seeing logos and, you know, and they're going to assume it's official just by looking at it.
I think that's a really good start, a good way to, you know, at least be transparent about it.
Right.
And then I also appreciated the conversation we had around not social media accounts that are created by clubs, but social media accounts created by students who are anonymous users, and how we can go about asking the social media providers to remove those clubs. That was also part of our conversation. We had an example of that. And so we did learn that. If you want to talk more about that.
Sure. Yeah, there was an example stemming from RLS. We're assuming it's student-generated an account, and so we're able to have the site administrator contact. I think it was an Instagram account contact asking them that it's not an official account. Please remove. But it's kind of a whack-a-mole process because you knock one down, 2 or 3 more pop up, and that's just the reality of social media. You know, so we could probably spend every week, you know, contacting providers to cease and desist on accounts.
I think it's something to think about because it had the RLS logo.
It had the logo
On it.
and had student images.
Yeah.
There was also conversation during the board policy meeting where it's like, what will our formal social media look like? Are we going to include comments? Are we going to answer comments? And so Erica reminded us that this is the first step, and then after that, then that's when we start discussing the admin regulations, the AR of this policy. Is that correct?
Correct. So this is just the broad policy. Staff would then work on developing the administrative regulation. We started that work, but we said we put a pause because we got to get this first, and then we will continue to develop the AR, but also coupled with that, a social media plan, because if, let's say, we decide to some of these Instagram accounts we want to pull back under our umbrella, we need to have a process for that as well, or any subsequent new Instagram accounts that are district sponsored. We'd want to have a really clear process for our staff and how that's handled.
Everyone feeling okay about this one? Yeah, okay. So is there a motion to approve the adoption of Board Policy 1114, the district sponsor social media? As
I'll make
presented?
that motion.
Great, thank you. Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Trustee Mora,
Aye.
Trustee Simon,
Aye.
Vice President Kerr,
Aye.
and Student Representative Wagner.
Aye.
Right, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, we are now at Student Learning and Achievement. Information regarding the 2023-2024 St. Helena High School course catalog. Mr. Chris Heller, please.
Yes, good evening, everyone. The high school administration is presenting 2 new courses, engineering and psychology, to add to the course catalog for the 23-24 school year, and we're seeking governing board approval. We would ask that you would approve them.
Is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment? Thank you. Thank you. Comments or questions, trustees?
I just had a question. So we're adding, it's a math teacher that's teaching. We're not dropping a math section. I just felt obligated to ask.
We are, we are not dropping, we are adding an engineering section to a math teacher.
Right, okay. And then psychology, so we do AP psychology, we just have not offered a regular non-AP psychology. And I'm just actually curious, was that we've found that students want to take it, but they don't want to take an AP? I'm just curious what the motivation is.
There would be some interest in that. Carolyn, do you have any perspectives on that potentially?
I do. Well, there's a lot of reasons. A lot of kids take way too many APs, and counselors and teachers have been finding that we take on more than we can handle. So some kids are really interested in psychology and might not want to take on the extra workload. It's a lot of homework for AP Psych. Some kids are just really afraid of the stigma around AP, so just offering another class. It also provides another period to take psychology, so there's multiple reasons, but it's a really good course, and I was going to say that I'm excited about both of these classes.
Oh, good.
I think it's great to add in psychology, non-AP, same reason. It's usually junior, senior class, and that's your heaviest time, and it's awesome, especially because it is related to, social emotional learning in a way. You're learning about how your brain works, so I think it's fantastic.
Great.
And at what age, what levels will be able to take the psychology
Grades 11 and 12.
11 and 12?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the 2023-2024 St. Helena High School course catalog as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Trustee Mora,
Aye.
Trustee Simon,
Aye.
Vice President Kerr,
Aye.
and Student Representative Wagner.
Aye.
Great, motion's carried. This now is a report on the St. Helena Unified School District 2023 summer school program. And I believe that this is a written report. Is there, Miss Allen, did you want to comment on anything? I'm sorry. Caught you off guard.
It's okay, actually. Good evening, everybody. No comment other than this is a typical report that we administer in May just to talk about proposed summer school programs. We will have a program at the primary school for kinder, first, and second. Those students that are currently in kinder, first, and second will stay for summer school in kinder, first, and second. Third, fourth, and fifth, we also have a program each grade level. They will stay in third, fourth, and fifth. That'll be at the elementary school, even though we have a roofing project going on. It will be not happening in the main area, so the classes will be in the main area for summer school. ESY, which is special ed, will now move over to RLS because of the roofing project at the elementary level. So all of our summer school for special ed will be there. At the middle school, we actually, and it's not, I can honestly say I've worked in middle schools for a long time here and other places, and this is typical. Middle school kids just do not want to engage in summer school. We offer it. We put it out. We get messages, and we just cannot get a class load of 10 or more. What we're looking for is 10 or more, and we can't get that. So we don't have any summer school offerings for the middle school, and that's unfortunate, but it's not because we haven't tried. And at the high school level, we have APEX, which is credit recovery, but we also have a course that's going to happen, which is going to be English, taught by Miss Ganshorn. And this specifically is for our students that are lacking some A through G credits. And it's not that they hadn't taken, and what we found when we researched this is Miss Linder, Mr. Garrity, Mr. Cinto, Mr. Fetters, and myself, where students are not getting their A through G credits. You would think it would be lab science. It is not. It's English at our high school level. And why it's happening is because they're getting D or F in 9th grade, and as they move along, they no longer care if they have a D or F in 9th grade. So that's the area that we need to focus on, is get those English credits back up for the students. So we're going to offer a class specifically this summer for those students who had a D or an F in English, and it's going to be multi-grade. And so we can get them back up to where they need to be on A through G tracking. And then, as I said, Apex. And then we also have the SST going on. So that's our summer school offerings.
Thank you very much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you. Is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to public comment? No. Thank you. Questions, comments?
If you'll excuse a newbie question here from the board. So the summer school program for the younger grades, is this like recommended by the principal? Is this totally optional, just kind of hoping that parents would take up on it?
It's
or-
our students. So with our PLCs, we identify students that need an extra ramp up. And so it's students that are identified that are invited to summer school.
Okay.
And so that's how we get our class loads. And we don't usually have any trouble in kinder through 5th grade filling those classes.
Thank you.
Our first priority has to go to unduplicated for students that are struggling, and then it's open to all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess also a newbie question, but I guess when we come back in the fall, just a few months, do we see after summer school, can the board, do we see, here's how many people participated, here's how many people did credit recovery at the high school? I just don't know what the follow-up is.
You do. You get a summer school report at the end as far as the outcomes. Mm-hmm. And that'll be presented by somebody else.
I know.
I was going to say, it might be a little, I don't know. We'll get it together, though. It might be lost in translation here, but we'll get something.
Exactly.
Hey,
Thank you.
any other questions? No, great. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Allen. Thank you. Okay, we're at public hearing regarding the 2023-2024 Local Control Accountability Plan. Mr. Heller, please.
Yeah, well, the draft LCAP for 23-24 is presented tonight for a public hearing for the community stakeholders, community partners, and the governing board to provide additional input. The recommendations will be reviewed for consideration in the final document to be presented back to the governing board in June. District staff will continue to work with Lucy Pearson-Edwards from the Napa County Office of Education, as she's the one that certifies our LCAP, and she's already provided suggestions to Mary and I for consideration for review. Overall, there's just a few refinements, as Superintendent Aurelio mentioned earlier, that we're in year 3 of 3. We're comfortable with our goals and a lot of our actions, but we do have a few things that have even been highlighted in the meeting earlier that we want to just mention. I would like to thank and commend Mary and Andy. Mary, as typical Mary, when I told her, this spring we had negotiations and we had a lot of hiring to do, my ability to really focus in on the LCAP was minimal. And Mary, just as she usually does, says, "I'll take care of it. I got it. I know this, and I'll do it." And so, those 101 pages are really Mary's work, and supported by Andy. So, only fitting in their final act together in the district to really be the ones that are central and integral in the development of the LCAP. So, Mary, thank you very much, and Andy, thank you. I appreciate it. So, Mary's going to take the honors to present the highlights tonight because I felt Mary's work, Mary's presentation. So, Mary.
Great.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Heller. First of all, it's a rough draft, so there's a lot of edits and things that need to be cleaned up. So this is just putting a lot of data down, and you'll see a lot of data in the LCAP because it's required from the state. You have to reference the California Accountability Dashboard. You also have to reference the 8 state priorities. So there's always a lot of data that comes into the LCAP. I'm only going to just highlight a few things, and just keep in mind also with the LCAP, when we put our actions together, it's not all inclusive. It's the major ones that require a lot of money behind them, as well as what we see as major initiatives in the district. But it doesn't mean that sites, when they give us their plans, are not adding additional things on. It's just right now, these are the bulk items that we see that we know we're going to go towards for initiatives. just as you're keeping this in mind. So some of the highlights I just want to point out, and you probably read it in the LCAP, so it's more for the community that's listening online, is that, we repositioned one of our elementary teachers into a math TOSA. We saw a lot of success with that this year. So that prompted us to bring in a secondary TOSA/coach for math. So that's a huge highlight because we are seeing the data showing that that particular role is giving us some improvement in mathematics at the lower grades. I think another thing I wanted to highlight is that our language growth for our ELs on the accountability dashboard, and you'll get a report from me next month for that, our students are making growth at 60%, and that's huge on the accountability dashboard for the state. So all of our students, we have approximately 230 ELs, 60% of them are making growth. And to me, that's fantastic. And so I'm very pleased with that. And that's a lot of work from our lower grades and our upper grades. Another thing I wanted to highlight is that our grad rate went back up to 92%, which is great since we were below, we were in the 80s, and we haven't been in the 80s for a while. So we're back up to 92. And our Hispanic and our socioeconomic, we're at 96% grad rate. So even though overall is 92, Hispanic and socioeconomic is 96. So huge. And that's, for a small district, those are things to applaud because it takes one or two kids to throw those ratios off and percentages off. So kudos to the high school. And when a student graduates from the high school, it's a culminating activity that started in kindergarten or TK. It's not something that magically happens in high school. It's all of the teachers working together to get that student to that point. So as a district, I applaud the administrators and the teachers and everybody that helps that process all the way along. Parent engagement was huge this year. For our Hispanic population, that's what we were trying to focus on. Not only did we create ESL class at the Mr. Cinto was a great advocate for that, working with Napa Valley College to start an ESL for our parents. We also had college tours for our parents. Roxana, great on getting that going for our Hispanic parents. We had reclassification ceremonies. We have one tomorrow at RLS for our students who are EL that are now going to be re-identified as fluent English speakers. So that'll happen tomorrow morning at RLS. Our DLAG parents are on fire. That is the District English Language Advisory Committee. They want to be involved in everything, and I love that. And they just have a lot of energy and want to be the voice of the Hispanic population in St. Helena and doing such a great job with that. Also, we've had the tech, our Spanish-speaking tech support for any parent. Every Monday until 5 or 6 at nighttime, we have that gentleman downstairs for any Spanish-speaking parent that wants to come and learn how to use Aries, learn how to use Google, create a Gmail account. We've had that all year on every Monday for any parent to come here. So just a lot of, and then just our parent presentations and bringing in community support with our parent presentations. So kudos to everything that's happened with parent engagement. We'll continue that for next year. I know Roxana has been an asset, and all the principals have been doing a darn good job. And I know we're going to get a great replacement, and Roxana's only right down the road, so that replacement will be able to tag into Roxana very easily. I think the only other thing I wanted to highlight is it's not just a wellness center downstairs, but it's a health and wellness center. And the partnership in this community, you all should be very proud of, because the St. Helena Hospital Foundation, Olay Health, the district, everybody wants to partner and make sure we have a health and wellness center here for our high school kids. And we've already kicked it off with piloting with Ole Health. We're meeting with St. Helena Hospital Foundation, who's already been doing our physicals for us, sports physicals, to kick off their mobile clinic as well. That will be coming on alternate days, separate from Clinic Ole. We're getting the word out to the kids. We're creating a video. We'll have the doctor from Ole Health coming into the classes to talk about what we offer, and then our mental health services. So it is, for a small district, you all need to be very proud of that, because that's a huge, huge wraparound whole child service. So those are some of the highlights that we've had for the district that you as board members, really kudos to you, because this wouldn't happen without the support of the board. Some things we need to identify, areas that we need to identify. Just quickly, we know math. Math is one of our major priorities, always has been, and will really now need to be strictly focused on with our new math coach as well as TOSA. We also know that we need to focus on A through G. Let's up those numbers. We're at 53%. We should be over 65 easily, and more towards 70% of our kids getting A through G credits. I think another thing, academics PLC, we need to focus on the PLC, which is the academic, and looking at the graduate profile, which is backwards mapping. What do you want to see a high school graduate look like? What's a portrait of a high school graduate from St. Helena? Once we identify that, we're going to work with a facilitator, or Chris is going to work with a facilitator, and Veronica, on what does that look like. So the facilitator will be working with us out of NCOE on what does that person look like, and then backwards map. What do we need to do in kindergarten to make that happen? What do we need to do in first grade to make that happen? So it's a full process, and I'm super excited about that, because that all of that helps with academics. Just literacy is right up there. So not only is math up there, but literacy is just as important, and we'll be looking at the science of reading. We're sending a couple of teams at the end of July, beginning of August, and then we'll be working with NCOE, which is Napa County Office of Ed, ESL, EL, ELA, EL coordinator, experts, so to speak, all year. So we already have some plans in place for Literacy for All. And I know Ms. Rocha at the lower grades, we're getting some additional reading resources to take home for the parents to read with their children at the lower grades, and then we'll be working on some things at the elementary level, because the priority still is making sure that all students by the end of third grade are reading at grade level. That's the priority for this district. And last but not least, that I think an area that needs to be focused on is discipline, not in reference to the punitive side of discipline, but the preventative side of discipline. We are way out of whack with our suspensions this year, and I think not only will that come up on the California dashboard, we're already identified that we're over suspending kids, and not that we shouldn't have consequences, but we need to come up with some alternatives to consequences. And that is not only a state priority, it should be a priority here. It doesn't help to have kids out of the classroom, but we also want to make sure they get the message, and so there should be some alternatives. And what I mean by that is Saturday suspension. What I mean by that is that you have to, let's say if you got caught for vaping, you absolutely have to go to a drug and alcohol class after school time for so many sessions. If you don't do that, then you get a suspension. So we have to be a little more creative in how we're disciplining our kids, because we've seriously been off the rails this year. And, students are doing some kooky things, and we just need to be a little more proactive and preventative in handling that. And that's it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Oh, you do have notes. I didn't think that you had notes. I was thinking, holy cow, you're doing a great job without notes. But nicely done. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any questions?
Oh, is there any questions?
Mary Ellen, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Going back to your recommendations, being a newbie-ish board member, what are next steps for, let's say, example, with the alternatives to suspensions? What would be next steps for the district?
Well, what needs to happen at the high school, and they know this, they are considered ATSI, which means that they're targeted support related to discipline because they had too many suspensions last year. So they have to present to you as a board evidence-based strategies to work with suspension, and that could be restorative justice circles. That could be staff training around a certain evidence-based program that has shown to decrease the amount of suspensions at a school site. It's all related to school climate and culture. All of it is related to school climate. So they actually, and Ben and Greg knows this, we've been meeting, we've been talking about it. They're looking at the research-based stuff right now. And whatever we do at the high school, we will be doing at RLS as well. So we're too small to think that we're just independent little contractors. We have to align all of our sites together. PBIS is, certainly, which is positive behavior intervention and supports. We have that at the lower grades. We just need to bring it all the way through. So there's a lot of things that we can do differently. But I think we're heavy on the discipline side and the punitive side this year, and not saying that some of those things don't warrant a suspension. Suspension is going to happen. It's just I think we need to look at some alternatives.
Trustee Simon, I could add that Mr. Fetters reached out to me today to begin conversations about how to begin Saturday school. So that is something that the high school is going to look at to mirror the practice at RLS for less suspensions and more opportunities for Saturday school.
And if I can add to, the example of like vaping, drug, alcohol. On the 30th, we have a parent workshop around drug and alcohol.
Great.
That's being led by Roxana, I believe. So it's kind of that full court press. It's not just the students, it's also the parents as well.
Great. So one more clarifying question. So for example, if it was Saturday school instead of a suspension during the week, does Saturday school still count as a suspension?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
It's just an in-school suspension. It just happens to be on Saturday. We just ruined their Saturday.
And it does, which will be more effective.
Yes.
And
Yes.
will not affect their academics during the week.
It will
like
not.
you said.
It will
so
not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public hearing. Bear with me here. The public hearing for the 2023-2024 Local Control Accountability Plan is now open at 8:07. Comments during this public hearing should be limited to the LCAP. It is our goal to hear from all who wish to be heard. We now invite members of the audience or on Zoom to address the Board of Trustees on the 2023-24 LCAP only. And so we'll wait 1 minute.
I have the timer.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Is there any participants on Zoom? No, okay, wait for the.
Minute has expired.
Great, thank you very much. I'm now closing public, or the, what is it called, public hearing? I'm closing that now. And we, just record, did not hear any comments on LCAP at this point. So any other further questions on this, trustees? No, okay. I do have a quick question. Is there other ways for obviously if someone is calling about the LCAP, that would be part of that would be a comment, that would be part of it. Like if somebody calls you tomorrow and says, hey,
Yeah.
I miss, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's still open for
Yeah.
consideration, and
Okay.
Mary and I will meet the next couple weeks and use the feedback that we receive from the county and any additional comments that we get next week to begin kind of finalizing everything.
Okay.
So we'll comb through it with any new comments.
Okay, perfect, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. And trustees, I'm going to ask, do you want to take a quick break or do you want to keep going? Keep going because we're
I'm fine.
yeah, we're good. Okay, here we go. Oh, Carolyn, how are you as far as your time? You're good? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we are now at business operations. This is the draft 2023-24 original budget, board approval, and public hearing.
Thank you. And so indeed, this is
I'm
the
sorry.
public...
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. And indeed, this is the public hearing version of the 2023-24 original budget. And so this was developed in alignment with the LCAP that Mary Allen just presented. And so we still have a few things to attend to, though, before the board approves the budget in June. For example, we need to analyze the governor's May revision of the 2023-24 state budget, and we do have some information about that, which I'll share during the next slide. We also need to review any final updates to the draft 23-24 LCAP and then incorporate that in the budget. We need to include all of the tentative agreements within the budget. What you'll see tonight reflects 95% of what's in the tentative agreements. And then we also need to update the 22-23 budget to reflect estimated actuals, because those, for current year, because those appear in the 2023-24 original budget forms that are submitted to the county and to the state. And so then in alignment with that, we need to finalize the 2023-24 original budget assumptions. And so then this will be brought back to the board for review and approval in June. So some highlights of the revisions that you can expect to see in June. We were very recently awarded a new kitchen infrastructure and training funds grant in the amount of $264,662. This is restricted funding. We've already received, under a first round of funding, about $25,000 towards kitchen equipment, and actually closer to $29,000 when you include how much we received to support training as well. And so I'm going to be recommending that Kay meet with Angela next year to develop a plan for spending these funds, and the project period goes through June 30th, 2025. I'm learning that I don't think we'll have enough information on the Prop 28 funding to actually incorporate that into the budget and the reports for the June adoption. I still anticipate that we'll receive somewhere in the neighborhood of about $150,000 to $166,000 district-wide for that funding to be spread amongst the 4 schools, but we just won't have enough information to mechanically put it in the budget for the June adoption. Same thing with the cultural enrichment experience grant for high school seniors. This is one-time funding. We're slated to get approximately $24,000 to support our seniors and for next year and supply them with some cultural enrichment opportunities. And again, we don't have enough information yet and won't until the 23-24 state budget is enacted for us to be able to plug that into the actual system. Also, when you see the budget that comes to you in June, you will see some additional revenue. In fact, it's probably going to be higher than the $129,000 that you see there. That reflects some student enrollment that we're projecting that will be on our special education MOUs from other districts. And then additionally, we are receiving new transportation reimbursement funding, and that'll be coming into us on the unrestricted side of the house. And that will support our expenses for transportation. And we haven't yet received the kind of the technical information that we need to plug that into the budget. So hopefully we'll have that for June as well. And then we heard a presentation during the May 9th board study session where we learned about a potential contract with Recolt Energy, and that will be on the agenda for this evening for consideration of approval. And the total cost budgeted for that would be $150,000, and my funding plan in that regard is to go ahead and charge that to Fund 40, our special reserve for capital outlay, and then replenish that with the estimated savings that we generate from those projects in ideally in 24-25. So the next few slides show some of the key assumptions that are built into the multi-year projection. And for example, with regard to revenue, we've talked a little bit in the past about how our property tax growth has increased compared with 2021-22. And so at the P2 report, we have learned that property tax growth is about 4.65% higher than last year. And then so with property tax growth beginning to steadily increase now that the pandemic is on the wane, we're now building a 3% increase into the budget in the subsequent years. We also talked this evening about District of Choice revenue, and so if the board elects to pull out of that program after 23-24, then we would be pulling out approximately $144,000. I believe earlier this evening I mentioned that I thought it was about $150,000, so I was a little off there. Then the next couple of items there reflect some adjustments to restricted federal and state funding. As the board is aware, we've received a lot of both one-time and some new ongoing funding sources that have resulted in kind of the post-pandemic world with this emphasis on learning recovery. And so, and then also new funding for arts and music, which has been great. And so we budget that as received, and so we see some big shifts there. It's all on the restricted side of the house, which, as I say, kind of takes care of itself. But as we make new decisions about when and how we're going to spend those funds, then we reflect that in the books. And so that's why you see kind of those big changes in the multi-year projection. And so pulling out those one-time dollars as we spend them down. We are receiving also 2 new mental health grants, which I'm excited to report. And one of them is for $35,000, and that's for 4 years, and the other is for $24,000, and that's for 2 years, and that will help to support the Student Health and Wellness Center that Mary Ellen was describing earlier this evening. And then we've just got some additional data there about enrollment and average daily attendance. And I will encourage Kay Vang, the incoming CBO, to review our enrollment projections and then build those in the multi-year projection. They really don't impact us so much for our main revenue source, which is property tax revenue, but it does impact us a little bit with some of the other funding that we receive, such as lottery and some special ed funding and so forth. And then what I'd like to point out on this slide with regard to revenue is just the very bottom line item, which would be the statutory cost of living adjustment, or the COLA. Again, for us, because we're a basic aid district, this COLA really only applies to certain funding sources, and so special education funding, child nutrition, and our mandated block grant, as an example. Then the next couple of slides depict some of our changes through our multi-year projection on the expense side of the house. And so later tonight you will see the public disclosure documents associated with the tentative agreement with SHTA. And so when we apply the formula that we have settled on, then I'm estimating that the salary increase would be 3.80% in 23-24, and then 2.40% in 24-25. And we have not settled on anything for 25-26. Negotiations for that next 3-year term would be ensuing in the 24-25 school year. And so just for budgeting purposes at this point, recalling that I had to kind of assemble and build the whole budget during March and April in preparation for the May meeting, what we've done for budgeting purposes is budgeted the same increase for all employee groups. And the board will see that we've got some other items that we've negotiated to subsequently that will be reflected in the June version of the budget. Okay. And then talking about staffing a little bit, the 23-24 original budget includes 1 new full-time math TOSA, and we are using restricted funding for this particular position for next 2 years. And then in the budget that you are seeing tonight, that would be shifted to the unrestricted side of the house in 25-26. And then additionally, with the planned Prop 28 funding, we've included a new .20 FTE art section at the high school, and that's part of the high school's plan for the use of those funds. 80% of this particular ongoing funding needs to go to staffing, and it is upon the sites to build the plan for the use of those dollars. And so when we're able to book those dollars, then we're going to shift those costs from the unrestricted side of the house into this particular pot of money. And then Mary Ellen spoke about I think about the new English arts language section for the next 2 years, and so to support underperforming students. And so we've added .20 FTE in the budget for that, and that's budgeted using some new restricted dollars. And then on the classified side of the house, we have a net increase of .80 FTE for the new academic services assistant position, and that's a position that the board approved, I believe, during the April board meeting.
Yeah, a few months ago.
And then the multi-year projection reflects a reduction of a temporary 1.0 FTE special day class teacher at the primary school after 23-24. This position was added for 1.5 years to support learning loss recovery post-pandemic, and again using special restricted money. And then, as you'll see as we look at the multi-year projection, and you see some deficit spending projected as a result of the negotiated increases that we've talked about during the previous slide, we also built in a reduction of 2 FTE in 24-25 and 1 FTE in 25-26 in certificated staffing, just based on some of those enrollment projections that we've been looking at and discussing. And so those notes will be included for the incoming CBO to review and discuss with administration. And then finally, this budget includes the rollover of 1 FTE school bus driver, a vacancy that we've had that we've never been able to fill. And so there's some consideration too to really kind of revisit that, and maybe we can pull that out of the budget at this time, and because we've been functioning pretty well with the current staffing. And if we add maybe a little bit more district van driving time, that would alleviate our transportation assistant and driver with a little bit of time for her to help with some of the clerical tasks, and that might be the perfect balance. So we could see some savings there as well. And then in addition, this budget includes the net savings from the 22-23 STRS and PERS retirement incentive. We factored that in with new hires. And then the restoration of a full contribution to deferred maintenance per the 23-24 budget assumptions, which are included in this packet, of $300,000. We've talked already about some of the adjustments to one-time restricted funding. And then we've looked really carefully, especially to support incoming staff, at our budgets for some of the different summer construction projects. And so really tried to budget those out and ensure that everything is aligned across fiscal years, and so that it's easy for incoming staff to follow. And then with regard to our Future Ready Classrooms program, the board may recall many years ago, before the pandemic, we'd established by board direction with an interest in ensuring that we have classroom environments that support 21st century learning skills. We established a kind of a pilot program to put updated technology and furniture in the classrooms, and that was a successful program. And we purchased quite a bit of that equipment and furniture. And so now it's appropriate to go ahead and maintain it as a set aside of approximately $200,000 in the fund balance. So that means that that portion of the reserve is designated as one-time money that can potentially be applied to those types of projects when we've completed our Future Ready School strategic planning. We're ready to start looking at that again. And then in talking with the sites, we've made a couple of changes to our budget, and all of this is also reflected in the budget assumptions. We have given each school site a discretionary allocation of $2,000 per site to support parent outreach activities. That was a request from the sites. And then per the budget assumptions where we talk about enrichment and enhancement, we have in the multi-year projection shifted some of those expenses from the one-time Kaiser grant to the general fund, and then we're using the remainder of the Kaiser grant to really focus on the Yosemite trip and the 5th grade outdoor ed trip. So then this is the slide that depicts where we are at a high level with the multi-year projection. And so the most important line to look at would be the one that's highlighted in yellow, because that shows the net increase or decrease to the unrestricted fund balance. And so for 2023-24, for example, we have a budget deficit of approximately $320,000 projected, $542,000 in 24-25, and then $454,000 in 25-26. And for a budget our size, this is not terribly significant, but of course the multi-year projection is used as a forecast tool to help staff and the board evaluate budgeting and financial decisions, and then pay attention to staffing and so forth moving forward, so that we can eliminate that deficit. And I think that with some of the changes that we talked about during the previous slides, we'll probably see some of that red go away with the June adoption. And then we do have the projected reserve, as you can see, in 23-24 of almost 20%, and then going to 18, and then 17% in 25-26. And it's important to recognize, too, that part of the reason the reserve is lower is because we have done quite a bit of transferring out to support our needed facilities projects, and then we've got $5 million that is assigned in the fund balance, and you'll see a slide that talks about that in a minute. If we did not have the $5 million that was assigned for important reasons, which you'll soon see, then that figure would be factored into the available reserves, and so then the reserve percentage would be higher. And I'm realizing now this is a little challenging to see, but this is a required statement that has to be included in the original budget package each year, and it talks about the portion of the fund balance, the unrestricted fund balance that has been assigned by staff discretion, and it's basically saying that those things for which we're setting aside funds, we don't want to dip into the reserve too much so that we don't have those amounts set aside. And so that includes setting aside a rather significant portion of the reserve for any future high priority deferred maintenance projects. And we've talked about over the past year, we've talked about the list that we have of some pretty significant projects, and now we want to kind of strategically leverage use of the reserves, and then eventually maybe some state facility funding to cover that, rather than potentially considering a bond. Okay, and that was a lot, and so with that I would turn it over to the board for a public hearing and any questions and discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you, as always. Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing now. The public hearing for the 2023-2024 budget is now open at 8:28 p.m. Comments during this public hearing should be limited to the budget. It is our goal to hear from all who wish to be heard. We now invite members of the audience and Zoom audience to address the Board of Trustees on the 2023-24 budget only. Okay, so we'll wait for a minute. Great, thank you. See, the governing board has heard, well, actually, for the record, there's been no comments in either in-house or on Zoom. The public hearing now is closed now at 8:30, closing it. Questions, trustees? Questions on our budget?
I have a couple.
Okay.
The Prop 28 funds, so I know that's going to change as the governor budget or actuals are shared out. I'm just making sure, so it was a .2 art teacher addition that comes from that. And then the rest, I believe, I don't remember which month, we looked at a list of purchase requests to enhance, instruments, things like that. So that's basically what would comprise that amount. Whatever we get, we have a wish list and a teacher, .2 teacher.
Yes, and actually, the wish list that you're talking about is from the one-time arts, music, and instructional materials block grant, and I do
Okay.
have a little bit of information about that. And the prop, so what we've learned with the May revise is that that particular pot of money is going to be cut even more than we thought it was going to
The
be.
one
so-
time?
The one time,
Okay.
yes. So the original projection on that back in January was 766,000. And then we learned that it was going to be cut by about a third, so the plan that the board approved reflected that at a estimated total of about 489,000. Now we've learned that it's going to be cut more, and so we won't be getting any more money, so we'll need to shave about $100,000 off of that plan. However, Mary Ellen and I have discussed it, and we've determined that we can shift what we budgeted for some textbook materials just simply back to the existing textbook budget, and that will be adequate to cover that without having to make any budget changes, because we've got a very sufficient textbook budget for the next couple of years.
Okay.
And so that's something that I'll be reporting more in detail on in June. That was kind of new information. And then the Prop $28 would be approximately, I think that's still going to be about 166,000 spread across the district. And so far, we've determined that we've made the one decision about the .20 FTE art teacher, and then the principals will work with their staff to budget the rest of those monies. The Prop 28, we haven't developed that plan yet, but we will soon, hopefully.
And we did get approval. I remember, I think you shared that it was supposed to, at a state level, be used for hiring teachers, but since we have, I don't remember the reasons why, but we have a way, because we have art, to use that money for things other than just a teacher salary, correct?
Correct, and so the district may apply for a waiver to, to waive all or a portion of the 80% staffing requirement.
And then one other question. The parent outreach, so the new $2,000 per site that is going out, just so I have an example of what is parent outreach.
So, for example, childcare and even food and supplies to support meetings so that we have more parent participation.
Perfect.
Or it could go for training or
Okay.
guest speakers, things like that.
Thank you. That's it.
Are there any other questions? Feeling good? And thank you for answering all my questions about the budget, and thanks to the finance questions. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're on now to review and consider approval of Resolution 2244, authorizing the issuance and sale of 2023 refunding general obligation bonds for the purpose of refinancing outstanding general obligation bonds. Okay, Ms. Stubbs, please.
Thank you. And this would be the resolution associated with the presentation that the board heard earlier this evening to refinance that particular series of bonds. And so, and the resolution itself includes language that addresses the escrow agreement, and I think there's another agreement in there that's presented to you for information, and then all that's sort of subsumed within the resolution. And I would recommend that the board approve this resolution.
Great. Right.
Can I add to that? I personally feel a sense of urgency to pass this so we have Andy still with us to go meet with the creditors in the city. So, no pressure, but it would be great to have it taken care of now before Andy leaves.
Is it something that taxpayers would see next year in their taxes, a reduction? I mean, timing wise, or is this something down the road?
That's a good question. I believe they would see it next year, and I would want to confirm that and then get back to the board about that.
And Trustee Wolf, I know our presenter earlier, when I had met with him in advance of this, part of the urgency as well is to try to get it in for the next tax cycle for our community.
Okay. Any other questions on this one? No? Okay. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of Resolution 22-44 as presented?
Motion to approve the resolution.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hanson, would you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Mora?
Sorry.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
Vice President Kerr?
Aye.
And Student Representative Wagner?
Aye.
Right, motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you for your work on this, Andy.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Yes,
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now at contracts over $25,000. Ms. Stubbs, please.
Thank you. And we have a few for the board to consider this evening. We have a renewal with Clearwater Wellness Institute. And that would be for our athletics program. That would be for sports medicine. And this lives within the budget that the board saw earlier this evening. The next would be with Little Backpacks for transitional kinder programming for preschoolers. And this too lives in the budget that the board saw using expanded learning opportunities program funding. And I'm pleased to report that with the governor's May revise, he is giving us another year to spend the revenue that we received for this particular program in 2021-22 and 2022-23. We now have until June 30th, 2024 to spend that, whereas before the May revise, it was looking like districts wouldn't be able to spend all of that timely. We would have to send the money back, send part of the money back. So I'm very happy about that. And that would be continuing their services for our students. Then the next agreement would be with CFW Advisory Services, and that would be for the bond advisory work that you learned about this evening. And even their fee, the $65,000, would be payable solely from proceeds of the sale of the municipal securities. And then the next would be a series of MOU renewals with our local partner districts to provide students who receive special education services with placement in our transition program classes and or our SDC class. And that would be revenue to the district. And these are not students who are in the DOC program, but those who elect to come here under the MOU. And the budget that you saw earlier reflected some of the revenue anticipated for these students, but we've learned that we will probably have one or two additional that are not reflected, and so I'm going to be making that change, and you'll see that in June. And then finally, we have the contract with Recult Energy for energy efficiency project consulting. And this is the proposal that the board saw during the May 9th study session. And that would be $150,000. However, it's paid out in $25,000 increments based on established project milestones. And as we discussed earlier, that would be budgeted under Fund 40, using part of the fund balance there, but then we would replenish that with savings during the first year. And so with that, I would recommend that the board approve contracts over $25,000.
Okay, trustees, are there any questions on this, on contracts over 25,000?
Just a quick one with Ricolte, if I'm saying that right. Has what Gopal done till now, where we aren't paying, that's all just part of his presentation, and then it starts from here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the MOUs. So it looks like we have 3 MOUs: Calistoga, Middletown, Howe Mountain. Are these students already here at as a continuation for these students?
Yes, for Hal Mountain and Pope, those would be continuations.
Okay.
For Calistoga, it would be continuations plus 1 additional new one.
Okay.
And then for Middletown, it would be 1 continuation and 3 new ones.
Okay. So there's where my question comes in, is so as far as our making sure that we're adequately staffed for that, I mean, are we going to have to hire additional staff members, teachers for that?
No, that's a good question. That was part of our review and determination about accepting the students, is that we had adequate staffing. And with that, if the student requires a one-on-one paraeducator by virtue of their individual education plan, then that would be the onus would be upon the district, the other district, to pay for them.
Okay.
So that would be an additional cost, and then that's enumerated in the MOU.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that when it's not included, if there's additional costs, then we would have additional revenue coming in. It's not part of the revenue already.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. Perfect. Great. Thank you.
And to clarify, we accept these students because we can provide services that their districts cannot.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And then we do analyze the staffing and so forth.
Great. Okay. Any other questions on this? Okay, awesome. Is there, bear with me just for a moment. Is there a motion to approve the contracts over $25,000 as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Trustee Mora,
Aye.
Trustee Simon,
Aye.
Vice President Kerr,
Aye.
and Student Representative Wagner.
Great.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're at Human Resources. Consideration of approval for the 2023-2024 Declaration of Need. Mr. Heller, please.
Yes, each year we are required to file the Declaration of Need for potential short-term credential waivers with the Napa County Office of Education. If this would only occur if we were in a spot where we needed to employ teachers who do not possess a credential. So although we don't foresee this occurring with our current staffing, the Declaration of Need does provide us the flexibility with the California Teaching Commission, CTC, with estimates in the position in case certain unexpected situations arise. So you can see they're typically in the area for us in math and science, as I imagine they are in just about every district throughout the state. So we are fully staffed, fully credentialed, but just in case some unexpected situation were to occur that would require us to get someone who did not possess a credential, those typically would be in the areas that we would seek somebody to employ in what's called a STIP or a PIP.
I'm sorry, what is that called?
STIP or a PIP, it's preliminary intern program or short-term intern program.
Okay, okay. Great, thank you. Okay, is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on the agenda item? Do the trustees have any questions on the agenda item?
No.
No questions? Is there a motion to approve the 2023 Declaration of Need as presented?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Trustee Mora,
Aye.
Trustee Simon,
Aye.
Vice President Kerr.
Aye. Motion is carried. Next one is review and request for approval of AB 1200, public disclosure documents associated with the tentative agreement between SHTA and St. Helena Unified Schools. And that is Ms. Stubbs.
Thank you. And
Thank
these
you.
would indeed be the public disclosure documents that are associated with the tentative agreement that Mr. Heller will be describing in the subsequent agenda item. And within the documents, it depicts the same multi-year projection that the board saw earlier this evening.
Is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? No? Do the trustees have any questions about this agenda item? No questions? Is there a motion to approve the AB 1200 public disclosure documents associated with a tentative agreement between SHTA and St. Helena Unified School District as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Trustee Mora,
Aye.
Trustee Simon,
Aye.
Vice President Kerr.
Aye. Motion is carried. Final one is consideration of approval for the collective bargaining agreement, tentative agreement with SHTA for the period of July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2025. Mr. Heller, please.
Yes, you've heard a lot about this tentative agreement already earlier this evening and then just in the previous agenda item. But this tentative agreement with SHTA, St. Helena Teachers Association, is presented for approval tonight. That will close negotiations for the next 2-year period and reopen negotiations for the next 3-year successor term in spring of 2025. Again, as President Farrell mentioned, the process itself does involve both groups representing their constituents very well, very professionally, and I believe that we work to an agreement that is mutually beneficial for both parties moving forward. So I would ask for your approval.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there anyone participating via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? There's no comment. No comment. There's no one in the audience. Do the trustees have questions about this agenda item? There's no questions. Is there a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement, tentative agreement with SHTA beginning July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025 as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those, Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Trustee Mora,
Aye.
Trustee Simon,
Aye.
Vice President Kerr.
Aye. The motion is carried. Okay, the grand finale, the future agenda items. Here we are. It's our June meeting, June 15th. Quite a bit. We'll also, what are we going to add? We were going to add,
Bring back the goals.
bring back the goals.
And then a lot of contracts and things to approve. It'll be
Right.
a heavy business meeting.
Perfect, as usual,
Goals,
kind of a
yeah,
June
in
meeting.
June.
Do the trustees have any subjects to be added on for consideration?
The only one I was thinking about is the alternatives. I guess it's not alternative suspension. I don't know if that's something that needs to be voted on here or if it just happens next school year. That's the only reason I wanted to ask.
I'll defer to.
One, we probably would not be ready to present something like
Okay.
that come June, but it's something we can
That's fine.
look into next year as we develop those plans.
I just wasn't sure how that timeline worked.
Yeah.
Perfect, okay. Any other thoughts on future agenda? No, at this point, okay. Okay, we're down to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Is there a second?
A second.
Ms. Hanson, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Trustee Mora,
Aye.
Trustee Simon,
Aye.
Vice President Kerr,
Aye.
and Student Representative Wagner.
Aye.
The motion carried, and the time is 8:49. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Well done.